The Israeli military claims to have killed one of the top rocket developers for the Islamist terror group Hamas during an airstrike on Gaza. Israeli troops are continuing to battle Hamas in Gaza, targeting underground tunnel networks around Gaza City, where Hamas are also thought to be holding hostages seized during the October 7 terror attacks.
Israeli airstrikes pound Gaza, as Israel says the next stage of its war on Hamas is underway. The Israel Defense Forces released this footage of its soldiers on the ground in Gaza. They don't name specific locations, but ground troops are believed to be targeting the complex webs of underground tunnels.
As Israeli troops get further into Gaza City, the tunnel systems are going to be a real problem. And they'll be extremely, well, they won't clear any until they're sure no hostages are there. This is the #1 priority.
The Israeli military could aim to drive Hamas militants out of the tunnels, or blow the tunnels up, or even flood them with seawater. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his troops are making progress above and below ground in Gaza.
The fighting in the south is advancing with a force that Hamas hasn't known. Gaza City is encircled. We are operating in it and deepening the pressure on Hamas every hour, every day. So far, we have killed thousands of terrorists above the ground and under the ground.
As Israeli troops advance on Gaza City in the north, armoured IDF vehicles are also gathering on Israel's southern border with Gaza. And the Israeli Navy released footage of operations off the coast of Gaza. Israel is targeting Hamas by air, on land, and potentially soon by sea.
Our correspondent Tania Krämer in Jerusalem told us more about the IDF's operation in and around Gaza City.
Well, the Israeli military stays very vague as to the locations where they are exactly, but we heard from army officials that they're closing in on Gaza City. Gaza City is a huge city with many neighborhoods there. They're operating in some of them, but their main target is, we understand, they're in Shati, with airstrikes. Also, probably one of the areas of interest is the Shifa hospital, which is in the center of Gaza City. The army also said that they have found and destroyed 130 tunnel shafts that they have, seen on their ways in. Military experts also talk more about these days about, mounting pressure to possibly come to a temporary ceasefire that would be put on the Israeli government. That has, of course, rejected these calls so far, but seeing the mounting death toll among Palestinians and civilians in the Gaza Strip. But so far, there's no, of course, call for a full ceasefire here. This will not be responded. So we also saw today, again, thousands on the move again from the north to the south, as the army has called on residents that are still in the north to move southwards. But we understand that 1.5 million at least, that's an estimated number by the United Nations, are on the move out of the 2.3 million population of Gaza between in the north or the south. And we also understand that airstrikes continuing as well in the south of Gaza.
Tania, the war is now entering its second month. Are Israelis overall satisfied with the way their government is handling this conflict?
Well, I think you could say that, there's an overall support for these war efforts. People are still also coming to terms with what happened on October 7th, the terror attack. And there's a coming together in this. But of course, there is a question what is happening to the over 240 hostages. And there's a lot of criticism leveled by the families and relatives against the government, how they're handling it. There are more questions about where will this war go. It's going on now for over 4 weeks now. And also there's a lot of criticism leveled at Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself, because he hasn't taken responsibility so far for the intelligence failures leading up to October 7th.
Tania, you mentioned the hostages. There are reports that Qatar is trying to mediate for a possible release of at least some hostages. What do you know about that?
Well, these are unconfirmed reports that, were in the media in the past days that Qatar is actually coming closer to some kind of breakthrough that could see between 10 to 15 hostages released. There was also a statement earlier in the week by the Hamas Qassam brigade saying that they would be willing to release about dozens of hostages, but that Israel is not responding now. We also understand, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself has said he wouldn't go for a temporary ceasefire that would be needed to release those hostages unless all the hostages are released. So the situation is, as always in such situations when it comes to, negotiations behind closed doors, unclear, and we just have to wait and see, what the next hours will bring in this regard.
Tania Krämer in Jerusalem there. Thank you, Tania. Mike Martin is a senior fellow for war studies at King's College in London. I asked him what Hamas tunnel network looks like and how long it might have taken to build.
Well, I think Hamas have been building it for the last 15 years since the Israelis, last 18 years, in fact, since the Israelis pulled out from the Gaza Strip in 2005. What it looks like, imagine the above-ground landscape, but mirrored underground. So you have tunnels at different levels. So you have communications tunnels at a higher level and stores of supplies and rockets further down. And the whole thing exists in 3 dimensions, with some of the tunnels up to 50 or even 80 meters deep.
You just mentioned that some of them are 80 meters deep and the whole network be like 500 kilometers long. Others say that is exaggerated. So your take is that it is the size of this web is correct?
Look, in reality, we don't know. And I think it's also important to stress that there's probably no one within Hamas who knows the entire network of tunnels. The nature of Hamas is it's a decentralized organization, so different people will understand different sectors of the network. But it is extensive. It's sufficiently extensive that it can withstand the bombardment that we've seen over the last few days. Hamas was still able to continue firing rockets back at Israel using this tunnel system, even though it was under very, very heavy aerial bombardment. So it is quite a successful operation from Hamas.
Now, Israel seems to have tasked a special unit, a special combat engineering unit, to find out more about the location and structure of these tunnels. How exactly will they do that?
Well, there are a number of ways. The chief way is by using ground-penetrating radar. And that's not perfect because, obviously, different types of ground have different reflexive signatures. And there are other things like sewers and other layers within the ground. But that is a chief way of understanding the tunnel network, or at least where the tunnels start closer to the ground. And then you can trace them using robots and other drones that are able to move through those tunnels to see where they go to.
There are suspicions that the hostages that Hamas is holding are being held in that tunnel network. Now, when an army unit gets into these tunnels, how can they rescue these hostages, and how can they avoid to kill them accidentally?
So I think the key, well, firstly, I think not all of the hostages are held in tunnels. I think a large proportion of them are. But the key here is reconnaissance. So if you discover the location of a tunnel, perhaps with ground-penetrating radar, like we just said, the next thing you need to do is get some sort of unmanned, like a drone or something on wheels, or perhaps a fiber optic cable with a camera. So imagine the telescopic surgery that we do every day in hospitals. Get one of them down the tunnels to see what's going on. And then once you can see what's happening in the tunnel, you can look at different ways of assaulting them. Obviously, a key way is just to pump them full of anesthetic gas so it knocks everyone out and everyone's unconscious. And then you can move in and separate the hostages from the hostage takers.
Now, some are also speculating that Israel may use a so-called sponge bomb. What is that exactly?
It's expanding foam. So if you have a tunnel that perhaps you've done your reconnaissance, you know it's an arms dump, or you know that it's only full of fighters, then you can either seal off the entrance or seal off a critical junction with this particular type of munition, which basically it creates expanding foam. And it, like you do on a building site or somewhere else, it will explode and fill up all the cracks in the tunnels with a foam that then hardens. So it's soft at first, but then hardens into a very hard substance, and it seals off the tunnels.
Mike Martin there from King's College, London. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.